Alright, hey everybody, this is WildBlade from Creative Media Vault in Yokohama, Japan. And we're going to go ahead and jump right back into where we left off yesterday. So yesterday I was explaining the origin of my world of WildFIRE. So we went all the way back in time. And basically the purpose of this stream is for me to teach you how this entire universe began. So if you're wondering what I'm talking about, WildFIRE is a theory that I've been working on for a very long time, about like maybe 20 or 30 years, actually 30 years. And it covers a very long expanse of time. So we're talking about like at least 10,000 years worth of storytelling from the main points of the book, from the beginning of the, I guess, the main storyline. But I am a game developer, and I do have my own books, and I have my own comics, which I explained in the previous stream. So I'm not going to go over that again. But for the purpose of me doing this is actually just to kind of break down what actually happened before the main storyline kicks off. So what we did yesterday is we actually went back about like 10 million years ago, and we started with the creation of the universe. So this girl that you're looking right now, she's one of the pivotal characters in the main WildFIRE storyline, and her name is Ayami Nishiyama. But way before she's doing her thing, like killing demons across the globe and stuff like that, and way before the events of the first Ryukage comic. So we're looking at the cover of issue number 1, then issue number 2, and issue number 3 of the Ryukage comic, which is where the new storyline for the Ryukage kicks off. But what I did yesterday, and I went all the way back like 10 billion years ago, like 10 billion years ago, to the very beginning of this universe. And like what you're going to see there is like totally wild, right? So I'm not going to go over everything that we talked about yesterday, but I'm going to kind of speed run that just to get you up to the continuation of this. So this is part of a series that I don't necessarily intend on animating, or but I probably won't animate this. And I don't really intend on making it into like any like live action movie or anything to do with the video games that I have on my website or something like that. This is just information that I'm getting out here prior to continuing with the story, right? So everything that we're going to discuss now does take place before the events of this comic series and the stuff that happened before the comic series. So what we started off with yesterday is we started off with the basic beginning of the universe. So as I explained, at the beginning there was nothing. It was just total darkness and maybe like some water. And there were two particles just kind of floating around for billions and billions of years. Like time wasn't even a concept then. But eventually, as they started getting closer and passing each other every now and then, they started getting a sense of like wanting to connect or wanting to combine, wanting to meet. And after like another billions and billions and billions of years, that actually happened. And when that does happen, what it does is it creates the first Big Bang, right? And I say the first Big Bang. This is something that I didn't really specify in the previous stream. But there are, according to my universe, there are actually 2 Big Bangs that I'll need to explain. So this is the first Primal Big Bang, right? And that's where these 2 particles of positive and negative energy finally, after like such a long time of wanting to meet, wanting to, being attracted to each other, finally connect, and boom, everything explodes. But now, when that happens, what happens is like these are two things, not even beings. There's no sentience in this at all. There's like no thought. It's just like I'm attracted to you. That's about it. And so what happens is when they finally connect and the Big Bang occurs, they don't know that they are completely opposites, so they cannot merge together. Otherwise, they would destroy themselves. So when they finally connect, what happens is they wind up creating a third particle, and this is what we call the gray. And the purpose of the gray is to create balance. So as soon as they connected, the gray was born, because it's like you two cannot exist in the same space. You are matter and antimatter. It just doesn't work. So the gray's entire function is to create balance. Now, the positive and the negative, they can exchange energy. That's okay, but they cannot completely merge. Otherwise, they would cancel each other out. So the gray is like the manager of this group, right? And now there's no conscious thought at this point. The gray does not care about either of them. The gray's only purpose is to maintain balance. So I want you to keep that in mind because like I said yesterday, balance is the main through line throughout the entire WildFIRE storyline. From the Ryukage to like the CDULO to like the post-apocalyptic future WildFIRE main timeline, everything is related to the word balance. So keep that in mind. So the gray is doing its job. It's managing to keep these two lovebirds apart, but functioning and exchanging energy with each other safely. And as this happens, the world or the universe starts to expand. And as they exchange energies, they're creating new energies. And they're creating new things, and that's where they're creating new colors and new feelings and emotions and stuff like that. There's still no conscious thought, just the concepts of these things. And this is where our elements start coming from. So like each color and each form is starting to, as they expand, they start taking on specific properties, right? And in the middle of this is still the gray and like positive and negative just doing their thing. Positive and negative, they are madly in love with each other. Like the concept of love has not been, they're madly attracted to each other. Once they've been combined, they cannot be separated apart safely, right? But in the meantime, they just keep on creating new stuff. And what this eventually leads to is the birth of the Ethereals. Now, until now, there had been like no conscious thought, but when it comes to what these colors and these primal colors, these primal textures and stuff like that, we call these the constants, because the constants will always be constant. Red will always be red. Blue will always be blue. Cold will always be cold. Hot will always be hot. So that's why they're called the constants. They can expand and they can get new properties, but they cannot change their base properties. And this is something else that we need to keep in mind, because when it comes to their children, the Ethereals kind of operate the same way. So these are what the Ethereals look like. And the Ethereals are basically the first conscious things in the universe. But I have to say, when I say conscious, I mean like they can think, but their thinking is still very basic and very primal. Because the only thing that they can think of is the same thing that their parents can think of. Like, well, not even like combining, but their thought process is based on expansion, right? So there are 6 main constants, there are 7 main Ethereals. So each of them representing an element or like a piece of that, like basically they're like the solid form of the constants, right? So for example, the blue Ethereal is like blue, cold, and like the concept of water and stuff like that has not actually formed yet. But this Ethereal is taking on the properties of the constant, and that is becoming its personality. It's becoming these traits. These traits are solidifying within this entity, right? So, and the same would go for the red Ethereal, which would be like the concentration of which would have the aspects of red, fire, like passion, these kind of things that would develop later. And these things, these properties of these Ethereals are constantly evolving, constantly developing, the older they get and the more that they expand, right? So green would be like there's no wood in the universe yet, but it's got the green one would have the potential for like wood and growth in time. The purple one would be like for what later develop into wind. The gold one would be like metal, gold, and this one should be brown or gray. It's like asteroids and rocks, right? Like I explained yesterday. So, but these physical things are not really existing yet, right? It's just the concept and the attributes. And these concepts and these attributes are sentient, but their only sentience, their only natural instinct is to expand and to grow. And if you'll notice, there's another entity in the middle, and this one is the light and the dark. So like unlike the other ethereals, this one is kind of special because like when it was created, it realized that like the light side has all of these are androgynous beings that I explained before, except the light and the dark. The light has a specifically feminine side, that would be the light side, and while the dark has the like masculine side, like definitive masculine side. And these are the balancers of these other six, right? Because the light and the dark, unlike these other ones, who can combine their who at this point are existing as trying to identify and exist as separate entities, separate attributes, who do not think that they can combine. The light and the dark actually realize that they cannot exist without each other. They are one and the same. The light and the shadow. If you turn off the light, the shadow is gone. If you don't have a shadow, there cannot be a shadow without light. So the light and the dark, they kind of understand this. And as I mentioned before, they're basically brothers and sisters. However, they really don't care about each other at all. They're like, hey bro, hey sis, what's up? Like that's about they holler at each other in passing, and that's about it. Like so they can communicate, but they cannot. Their overriding function is to expand their own and become their own like thing, and expand their own attributes. So they're not exactly the friendly family. They're just trying to expand. And what the purpose of the purpose of the light and the dark is to maintain the balance. If you'll go back, basically the light and the dark has the same function as the gray. Because the light and the dark realizes that at this point in time, the brothers and sisters cannot mix, right? They can't, like, fire cannot become water. They cannot exist. They will cancel each other out. So the light and the dark is basically not trying to be involved in this shit at all. It's trying to be neutral, right? So it's like just sitting there, and their purpose is to maintain the balance. And there's that word balance again, right? So, but because these guys, their natural instinct is to expand and to grow and to get new properties and basically conquer new territory, that naturally leads to a war, right? And because even though the universe is expanding and daddy and mommy, positive, negative, are still doing their thing, the constants and the ethereals are expanding too much, so it does become like kind of cramped, right? So eventually they start bumping into each other, and as soon as they bump into each other, they naturally try to eat each other's space, and of course that doesn't work out well. And so eventually the ethereals, they start fighting amongst themselves it becomes a turf war. They start fighting amongst themselves, and they're trying to take over each other's territory, and because they don't know that they can mix. Right? They've never tried it. It's just like I'm water, you're fire. We cannot mix. Right? So their only option is to try to fight and to take each other over. And they're not fighting like they're not choosing sides. They're going. It's a free for all, right? However, unfortunately, for the light and the dark, they're sitting right in the middle of this stuff. And at the very beginning of this war is going on for billions and billions of years. And like at the very beginning of this, the light and the dark, they're just like, not my problem. That's just not my problem. However, the fact that they're sitting right in the middle of all of this means that eventually the others cannot fight without attacking them, right? Because they're in the middle of everything. So the other ethereal eventually wind up teaming up on the light and the dark, because it's not because they hate them. They don't have any feelings for them at all. They're just like, well, you're in the way of my expansion. Like, I cannot expand. So I have to go through you. So basically, bro and sis, you were in my way of expansion. That's all they know, right? And so after billions and billions of years, like the light and the dark, they don't even fight back. They're just like they're just tanking a lot of attacks. So what they do is they create a barrier around themselves. They're like, okay, well, if we create a barrier, then that keeps the others from, they're going to fight. They're naturally going to fight. That's not our problem. But that keeps them from reaching us, right? And trying to take over our space. And that was a very short-term plan by the light and the dark. They didn't really think this one through. And Daddy and Mommy, they're just not even caring what's going on. But like, so the light and the dark, they're just like, okay, we have our barrier. They cannot break through our barrier, and this kind of creates a balance or like a peace. That's what they thought. But after billions and billions of years of tanking like constant attacks by their brothers and sisters, what eventually happens is, I mean, their brothers and sisters, they ain't no slouches. I mean, they're equally as powerful. You know, if they like, and this is something that the light and the dark did not really calculate, because these other ones are almost just as powerful, or just as powerful as them actually. And so after tanking so much damage, eventually the light and the dark, they wake up, their barrier starts to weaken, and they wake up and they're like, oh shit, we cannot tank any more damage. And they tried, but what eventually happened is they got overwhelmed by the power of the six elementals. And when they get overwhelmed, what eventually happens is they die. They get broken, because they cannot contain the energy of all six ethereals, right? So what happens is they basically just get broken and they shatter. And this is what creates the Shattered Realm. So not only does their barrier was a two-part barrier, right? So they had the external barrier and they had the internal barrier. What happened is they absorbed so much energy that it shattered the internal barrier, keeping the external barrier kind of in shape. But like when the light and the dark got shattered, it didn't just shatter them; it shattered all of the realms at once. And this is why we call it the Shattered Realm. And the Shattered Realm is where our universe is, right? So when this got broken, it like just wrecked everything, right? All of the constants and everything, they're still kind of separated, and they're still like have their own space. But even the basically the ethereals wound up blowing themselves up because they just didn't know what else to do. And fortunately, like in a way, this kind of caused them to get exactly what they wanted unknowingly, because while they were in their own zones or in their own spaces, they physically could not overlap, could not there were the limited amount of space. They were expanding outward, but the center, there was still a limited amount of space, and they just could not overlap. It just was not allowed. It was not, they weren't capable of doing it. But when the realm shattered, what this did is it created a rift in time, space, and it totally broke all of the rules that they were used to. It created a completely new area, completely new zone that, and you know, by the sacrifice of the light and the dark. So the light and the dark actually became kind of like the parents of this. So when the light and the dark, they shattered, what happened is their pieces fell into this rift, into the shattered realm. And this is where we start getting our planets, our stars. Our stars are part of the light side. The darkness around it is part of the dark. The pieces of their bodies falling through this new rift where there's no rules, there's no totally new rules and stuff like that. This is where our universe is, and this is what created our universe. And this is the second Big Bang. Right. So for our scientists and our stuff, like in our current universe, this is the Big Bang that we identify with as the beginning of our universe. That was with the light and the dark basically dying and creating the Shattered Realm. But if you'll notice, when the Shattered Realm was created, pieces of the other ethereal realms actually were shattered too. And this allowed them to fall into the Shattered Realm. So the ethereals basically blew themselves up, but part of their essence, they die, but they can't really die because the concept of death have not been created yet, basically. But their physical beings and what they were before were shattered, so some of their pieces could fall into this shattered realm too. And that's where we get comets, that's where we get different colors and stuff like that. So the Shattered Realm is actually what allows all of these essences to start mixing. And the way they mix is by falling through the rift, becoming part of the universe, expanding and stuff like that, falling through space, they actually start creating planets, and solar systems and like stars and stuff like that. And essences of each of these ethereals that could not mix before are actually starting to like come in contact with each other. And like, so for example, the planet of Neptune might be like a part of one of the like I think Neptune is like what, Saturn is all water. Neptune, I forgot what that is, but it might be part of like a large part of like this ethereal that came in contact with a part of like maybe the dark or the light to form a planet after billions of years, right? And that would be I think that would be Neptune is the water. Yeah, water, like maybe a planet that has more of the water, ethereal's essence in it. And so that would be why it would be a water planet. Whereas everything else is like just flying through space, creating whatever, bumping, colliding, creating whatever it can. And this is where our planets come from. Just like a combination of like ethereal energy, like dark, like light and dark matter. And so, like now we enter into the shattered realm, and the shattered realm is, like I said, our universe as we know it. Or not just our universe, but our, like, I don't like using multiverse, but this is where the concept of our universe comes from, and also is the concept of time. Right, this is where time actually begins, right? So when there's time, there's the possibility of like having multiple universes and stuff like that, which we'll get into later. But this is what the Big Bang is, what created the concept of time, because of like light speed and the expansion of space, right? And the ethereals are still sentient. However, their sentience is starting to evolve a little bit, because now they are not just primal things that need to expand. Well, in a way, they're still primal things that need to expand, because that's kind of what they're going to try to do here as well. But they are so shattered that they don't have the power or the their essence to just focus on expansion. They have to focus on like reforming themselves and getting their energy back and combining before they can start expanding anything, and that takes time. So like after billions and billions of years of the universe being like like molten rocks and stuff just floating around, and eventually the planets are formed. And what happens when the planets get formed is like basically most of the planets are just kind of barren, or just like kind of rocky asteroids, like there's no life. But they start getting hit by pieces of these ethereals. And eventually, like, we'll just go, and this happens all over the universe, not just Earth, right? This is happening like, these ethereals were huge. So everything that's in the universe is basically born of the matter that they had, right? That was never able to like, merge. But what happens is like on each planet, everywhere in the universe, like that, anywhere that ethereal body part or like, touched, actually started to like produce, or was actually not, I wouldn't say infected or anything like that, but yeah, kind of infected by that ethereal energy. And this is where they start realizing that they can actually, this is where they start realizing that they can kind of coexist in the same spot. So for example, this would be Earth. And what happens with Earth is like, different parts of different ethereals like wind up striking the planet at different times. And so we've got like, the blue ethereal, the red ethereal, and just pieces of them, because they're blown to shit. But the pieces of them are like hitting different parts of the planet. And, what winds up happening is every part that is touched by an ethereal, like, basically they start reforming themselves. They start reforming, like, not necessarily themselves, but avatars of themselves, right? And so, like, now we have our new ethereals, and, they're sentient. And so, like, we have our water ethereal, our blue ethereal, which can now produce water and ice. Our, like, green ethereal, who, like, is, like, can interact with organic matter. Our, like, fire, our metal ethereal, which can, like, produce, like, metals and golds, fire. our Earth Ethereal, who is actually the largest one. He's actually the largest one, but on most planets. However, like right now, he's kind of just realizing that he's alive. He's just being born, and he's like embedded in the planet, right? Because that's kind of his thing. And then we also have like the Wind Ethereal over here. So they touch down on planets, like universally, they are touching down on planets, stars, moons, stuff like that, and they're reforming parts of themselves. And they're just like, hey, like, okay, well, this is new. Like, so we can actually like exist in the same spot. Um, and for a brief moment in time, they're just like, oh, this is cool, so cool. We can exist in the same spot. But then that old natural instinct to like expand takes over. And they're like, we exist in the same spot, but there's not enough space for us to expand here. So what do? They go back to their old habits. And they start fighting again, right? Because realistically, this is all they know how to do. Not just on Earth, but on everything that they've touched, on every planet, like different versions of these ethereals start popping up, and they start waging war again, right? And so like you would have your fire, like they're not really even like picking sides, because they're still in the mentality that they have to expand, that they have to expand and they have to dominate, right? And so like they're fighting. The more they fight, the planets are much smaller than their old realms. So the more that they fight on each planet, then the more that they actually start coming in contact with each other. And this is where like they start realizing that by combining their powers, or by doing certain things, like that they can actually start getting advantages. For example, like one time the Earth, like when the Earth and the Fire ethereals were fighting, Earth punched the shit out of Fire and created lava. And like, both of them realized, this is a new element. This is not fire. This is not Earth. We can both use this, right? And then that's when they start kind of like, like realize, okay, well, we're not friends or anything like that, and we'll never be friends, but this could be advantageous. And so like this goes on, like the Earth itself is like only what, 4.5 billion years old, right? Well, the reason for that is because these guys were fighting for the first the first 5 billion years, and like very few things could survive. However, this is because of these guys fighting. This is actually where life does begin. It begins from drops of their blood, drops of drops of their essence, like into different areas and stuff like that. This becomes like the microbes, the like protoplasm and stuff like that, where new organisms actually start evolving, because they don't realize it, but they are actually mixing elements on a small scale. And so these guys, they're just like fighting each other, beating each other down, because they don't even know why. It's just their nature to expand. And so they just keep on going, and eventually what happens is, like, while they are not even paying attention to any of this, like they're just trying to expand, enough of their elements like start mixing, especially earth and water. So keep in mind that the ethereals are sentient beings. They're not smart, but they are sentient. So, so what happens is, while they're during this whole time that they're battling, they are getting experience and stuff like that, but the pieces of them are just keep on falling off and like mixing and matching with each other, and then eventually like it creates, like, for example, when during a battle of water and on Earth, during a battle of Earth and water, this new being rises up, and it doesn't know what it is, right? It's like it wakes up. It's in the middle of mud. It wakes up in mud, right? Not just him, but like the first male and the first definitively female wake up, because like when they were being formed, like I said, the ethereals are androgynous, but some of them do have like a stronger affinity for masculine and feminine energy. So when they start matching with other like blood of other ethereals, well, like for example, a masculine particle or drop of earth might mix with a masculine particle of water, and that would form a male. And the same for females and stuff like that, right? And so there are many different combinations, but like they're mixing in different forms, right? So what happens is like in the middle of these battles, these beings start being born and waking up. And the thing about these beings is they are not human yet. They're not human. They have ethereal knowledge. They have the history of the ethereals in them, and they also have the power of the ethereals. So these are what we call the bloodborn, right? And the reason why we call them the bloodborn is because they're born directly from the blood of the ethereals who are constantly fighting. However, these beings are almost just as powerful as the ethereals, if not more so in certain ways. Some are more powerful, some are weaker. But some of them can become so powerful because they have like the affinity of multiple ethereals in them. They have the ability to access the power of multiple ethereals in them. Even though they may dominate one ethereal element might dominate them. So these are eventually what will become the gods that we know of. And when I say gods, I'm talking like the gods that we know in our mythology, like Izanami, Izanagi, Zeus, like Quetzalcoatl, like the mythical gods from Egypt and stuff like that that humans know today were actually bloodborn from this ethereal battle that just kind of like woke up and were there and had all of this power and had all of this knowledge, had cosmic knowledge. They've never seen the cosmos before, but they have the knowledge of history in their blood. And so when these males and females start waking up and they're like, what are you? I don't know. What are you? I don't know. But like, we have power. And these our parents, we must be related to these guys. Our parents are like this fighting. Well, what do? Well, they become gods. They're like, okay, well, like, but they realize that they can mix energies, right? So some of them marry each other, some of them start having kids. Those would also be like bloodborn or demigods and stuff like that. And for a couple of for a couple billion years and stuff like that, or millions of years, things are going pretty good. However, like they realize that the space that they're on, the Earth and the planets and stuff like that, is kind of limited in space. So these beings, they do have the ability to leave space, leave their planet and stuff like that, just like the ethereals do. But finding other compatible like locations and stuff takes time. So eventually, although these brothers and sisters and husbands and wives and stuff like that are like kind of getting along, having like Zeus is having his like having Hera and like everybody just having a good time on Mount Olympus and stuff like that, because the Greek gods in my storyline are connected to the Earth ethereal. That's why they live on Mount Olympus. And then like the water would be like the Japanese gods, Izanami, Izanagi, and other gods across the world. But eventually they start doing the same damn thing their parents did and start fighting over turf, right? Not only fighting over turf, but fighting over which of them has the right to rule a planet. So this is where ego starts coming in to the storyline. So like one god would be like, okay, well, like our like we must be like somebody must rule this planet. Somebody must like take control of it. Otherwise, their initial thinking was kind of pure. They're just like, well, if our parents keep on fighting, they're gonna blow this place up. They're just gonna like destroy everything. So we should probably choose a ruler and or somebody to govern or some way to work things out together. And that was the original plan by the Bloodborne, the immortal gods. And so one guy says, okay, I'll be the leader. And the other ones were just like, yeah, that's how they're gonna fuck that. No. They just start doing the same thing their parents did. And so eventually the Bloodborne and the Titans. Okay, so I forgot to mention that these guys are what the new generation of ethereals, the ones that are far less powerful than their cosmic versions. We call these guys Titans. So the Titans came before the gods in this story, right? And even in Greek mythology, the Titans came first, like Kronos came before Zeus. And so this story kind of followed that as well. So, with the Titans fighting and then the gods being born and starting to fight starting to fight for territory and who's going to rule each planet. This, like I said, this is not just going on Earth. This is happening all over the universe. Any place where ethereal blood was spilled, where like unless it's just one ethereal particle blood just hits like one planet and he's the only one there. Like, other than that, there's a fight going on. So eventually these guys like start suiting up, armoring up, start trying to gain advantages over their brothers and sisters. And then now we have gods entering the war for like domination over like existence on all planets. So we've got our Greek gods, our Japanese gods, like I think the Indian god. We have like Quetzalcoatl. We have like either Amaterasu over here, and we still have the Titans who are in this too. So this is like a non-stop battle, and neither side is actually gaining any advantage because, like I said, the main purpose, well, the thing that they all forget is balance. So even when they're fighting, they are balanced. There's like nothing that's really breaking the balance between them. That's why they've been fighting for so long. Only like the Titans are a little bit too dumb to realize this, that they're supposed to be balanced. But the gods, they start dividing. They're like, okay, well, our powers are balanced, so why don't we create something that would that we could actually measure, like something that would actually wage wars for us, to where we could actually see which side is more powerful. Because if fire and water keep on battling, like we're just going to keep on coming up at a stalemate basically. And so they're like, okay, well, let us mix and let us experiment and let's see what we can come up with. And they're like, well, how did we get formed? And that gave them the idea to try mixing their creating their own armies, right? Their own proxies. And this is where humanity comes in. So because of the mixing of blood and stuff like that, during battles, we already had animals, we already had dinosaurs and stuff like that. Those were naturally born, and they weren't necessarily sentient like the gods or anything like that. They had intelligence to a certain degree, but they were not designed. Like the animals in the prehistoric dinosaurs and stuff were not designed. Were not specifically designed. And they weren't necessarily proxies for the gods. The gods didn't really see them as anything but maybe like useful tools. They didn't even eat them. They're just like these things are just running around. So they didn't really care about the animals. But they did try to weaponize them sometimes, especially dinosaurs, and it worked to a certain degree. But they needed something. The gods needed something where they could see, where they had input, where they had direct control, and where they could actually measure the output of the war, right? Because they weren't getting anywhere by themselves. So because of that, they started experimenting with creating smaller versions of themselves, and that became humans, right? And basically, in this storyline, humans were developed by multiple factions of humans were developed by multiple factions of gods, not to worship them, not to really serve them. Well, not to worship them as gods or anything like that, because they didn't even think they were gods. It's like, no, yeah, we're just making, this is our side project, man. But they were made to fight, and they were made to fight and battle over land, because the immortal gods realized that the immortal gods were a little bit smarter than the ethereal, well, a lot smarter than the Titans, because the Titans didn't do anything but fight. They didn't think about the effect on the planet. So a lot of times when they go to battle, they would just they would beat each other, crumble each other to dust, and just wreck the whole area until they could reform again and then go right back at it. The immortal gods, they saw this as a folly, because they're like, well, these fools, they don't know what they're doing. They're basically just always, every single battle that they're in, they're terraforming the planet, and so nothing can really grow. So we can't see the progress of the war, because one day a mountain will be here and the next day it's just not there until, and so the gods, they came up with, they're just like, well, we can't keep on just destroying everything and then waiting for it to reform or over this time. So why don't we do something that's measurable? And so they created humans, and they're like, even as the gods, we might be too powerful. So to keep doing this war. And so they created humans and like let humans become the proxies for their battles. Right now, the god they would still step on the field, like, and, whenever the humans were on the field, like Anubis was there. He's just like, "Yo, you my army," and he'd just like be walking. He's like, "Hey, Zeus, don't, it's time to throw down. Like, how many humans do you got? Well, I got like this many. How many humans you got? All right, so let's see like who's gonna win this battle. Are our forces stronger than yours?" And so humans were like basically were just created to be pawns for the war as a measurable outcome, because the gods could not do it themselves, because they did not know that they were supposed to be balanced. Now, the thing about humans, when they created humans though, they didn't really know what they were doing. And like that first, when they tried to create humans, they're just like, okay, well, here's my fire, here's your like a mud, let's like try to throw some like fire and mud in this guy and see what happens, right? And it didn't work. And so it took them a while to figure out how to even create mankind, because they didn't realize that they were missing two elements, the light and the dark. And so actually what happened is like during, like they were messing around with a lot of stuff. And then like they found like an element, like a falling star, a shooting star fell to the ground, and that had like some of the light energy and also had some of the dark energy. And so what they did is like, okay, well, I don't know what this is. And they threw it into the human as like part of the heart, and he just woke up and like, oh, okay, so we need light and dark energy. So they totally forgot about the light and the dark, because like their grandparents, the Ethereals, the Titans, they also forgot about the light and the dark, because like but the light and the dark do exist on every planet. That's why there's life. And so the light is basically like part of the human soul, and the dark is also part of the human soul. So without those two, humans didn't work. And so that's how they started creating their creating humanity. They're just like, okay, well, we'll take this part of the light and this part of the dark and put it into like these physical shapes, and that animates them there. Oh my god, they're alive. And then they started replicating more of them, like by having them reproduce. But every single human was actually just designed as a war machine to help gods decide the outcome of battle. And this not just humans, but also like aliens on other planets as well went through the same process. It was just gods experimenting to see who actually was worthy, which faction was actually worthy enough to rule that planet, basically. And then they made an agreement. They're like, okay, if our human or alien faction wins this war, like that means that we are the dominant force on this planet, so the other gods have to step back. It's the only way to stop the war. That's what they thought. Which didn't really work, because like a lot of times, when one faction would become stronger, the other faction would go home and like do some training, eat some Wheaties, and then come back and they'd be right back at it again. And this continued for billions of years across the universe. Now, because this is going on, like we kind of have to go back to what's going on. Oh, now, this is a slide of the dark side. Now, because humanity is born, humans were born a little bit differently than the actual gods. The gods themselves have sentience, they have power, they don't have the spark of the light and the dark. Right? That's why they keep on going forever with no conscience, right? However, because humans were created with the sparks of the light and the dark, then that means that they also have more emotion, and they also have a sense of right and wrong, positive and negative. The gods and the ethereals don't have this, because they didn't come from that. Well, they came from the constants, which were born from that. But their main thing is their primary dominance is to expand their own, right? They'll mix and match, but but it's only to try to get an advantage. There's no sense of morality or good or bad or anything. They're just whoever wins this war can expand, right? But humans created with the light and the dark actually have a sense of that. So this is where the human soul comes from as part of the light, and it's also where the other side of the human soul comes from, which is part of the dark, the shadow, because one cannot exist without the other. However, the immortal gods in the Bloodborne, they don't know this shit. So, when humans are fighting and dying, this is where the concept of death comes from, because humans were formed by the gods. The immortal gods are immortal gods. They technically couldn't be killed, or at least that's what they thought, and we'll explain why that was wrong later. But they technically couldn't be killed. They lived forever. They didn't really like age past a certain point or anything like that. So they're like, that's why war didn't mean anything to them, because they are like, oh, haha, I got my arm chopped off, and it just would regenerate, right? But as humans, like that's why they created humans as pawns, because humans can die, and that would show which element was actually more dominant, right? And so humans were designed to be cheap throwaway warriors that could be calculated as like, that could calculate the outcome of like a certain element's power, basically elemental power. And so, but they didn't realize that because humans could die, they also had fear, they had like emotion, and even though the soul never died because they had the light and the dark, the physical body could pass away. And they didn't the immortal god, they didn't know about the soul, and they didn't know what happens when the physical body dies. And that leads us to the next slide, which is the darkness. Now, when a human dies in battle, especially against his will or suddenly or with regret, then the physical body dies, but the soul is still there. So in this story, when the soul is still there and it dies dies a horrible death, or like on the battlefield, or with a lot of regret or something like that, then the darkness like needs to go somewhere. And what happens is the darkness is like, humans have blood, and so when human blood, dark blood is spilled on the earth or any planet, basically that darkness seeps into the ground, or becomes one with the elements around it, and it starts to corrupt, right? So the light is basically like, it's kind of like wind, right? It doesn't seep anywhere. When the body goes, like the light part of the soul, if it's like balanced or strong enough, it just kind of goes and looks for another, like goes back to a source, until it can find another an aligned source to connect itself to, and then it becomes a new entity, right? But like for the darkness is heavy, so a lot of times the darkness doesn't rise. It stays in the blood and it seeps into the ground. And this is where we start getting demons, right? Demons are formed specifically from human blood. Well, if you're on another planet, you don't have to be human. This happens anywhere. But on Earth, demons are formed by human blood, seeping into the ground with dark, negative emotions. And like, it can be hatred, it could be regret, it could be anything, but like that blood goes into the ground, the emotions take over, it starts combining with elements. Darkness can combine with any element, right? Fire, water, it doesn't matter. So it becomes and when it combines, that element starts becoming corrupt. And when that element starts becoming corrupt, after it takes a while for the darkness to like seek a new form, but when it after it corrupts, it starts looking for a new form. It starts looking for its own rebirth, right? And like eventually, once it finds another host, it could be like a day later, like a billion years later, we don't know, but it still remembers that darkness still remembers like the history of what happened, right? And then it'll reform, and it'll eventually become either a demon seed, which is a plant, which we'll explore later, or another demon, a full, like if the hatred and the negative emotion is strong enough, then to possess something that is strong, then it can become an actual demon, right? And this is where the concept of demons come from, because the immortal gods were messing around, chopping each other up and didn't care, and then the humans were getting stepped on, and their blood was seeping into the ground, and like the human blood is like, I'm gonna remember you, and it would go down, and then it would be reborn, and yeah, I remember you, and like now it's a hateful, vengeful spirit. But the problem is, during this time, there were so many. Look at the number of humans on the battlefield. There were so many humans that were just being sacrificed, like dying left and right, because the gods didn't care about them. They were just pawns, and they didn't realize that these things had like souls and negative emotions. So there were so many that eventually, not just on Earth, but like universally, there were so many of them that were dying, that were like screaming, and their souls were screaming out in pain and stuff like that, that they actually created something called the Dark Dimension, because there was just so much death in the universe at this time. And when the Dark Dimension was created, that is actually what started to, because of the way that these beings were dying, they weren't really dying in a happy space, and they weren't necessarily going to the light side most of the time. It's just like, I just got stepped on by Anubis, I'm pissed, and then they would die. And so the light side would just be like, okay, I'm gonna find a new body, see you. But the darkness still stayed in the earth, and still, like, still expanded. And the darkness started getting so strong that it started to disrupt the balance of the universe. So, and these guys, like, these gods and stuff like that, are totally oblivious to all of this. They're just like, oh, there's a new, no, I didn't create that thing. What's that? That's a demon? Where did that come from? Oh, well, and they just keep on fighting because they have no idea what the demons are or how powerful they are. Because the demons are like a new race, basically. A new race that is underground, that like nobody knows how destructive they are. In a lot of cases, like the demons, because they're lucky that the demons are new, because once the demons start getting older and start getting stronger, they're actually stronger than the god because they have the power of the darkness in them, right? But these guys, they're just like happily like waging the war, not caring, right? They wage their war, they go and like, sit down, eat some berries, and then go right back at it again. And all these humans are just getting crushed and stuff like that, and like, creating demons, and these guys are totally oblivious, right? And so, like, and this goes on for a long time. However, even though the gods and the titans didn't notice what was happening, one thing in the universe did, and that was... Oh, yeah, here's another battle. I forgot to put another slide in here. But, like, this is a whole battle going on. Like these guys happily fighting each other. All of the, like, humans just getting crushed in the middle, like, trying to prove their worth, and, like, dying sad deaths and stuff like that. And, like, everybody's totally oblivious, except for one thing. And that would be him, the Gray. Now, we're going back to the Gray because, like I said, the Gray is one of the most important concepts in this entire WildFIRE storyline. And the reason for that is because the Gray's only purpose is what? Balance. So until now, mommy and daddy, positive and negative, are still like spinning out doing their thing. They're still at the club. The Gray is still managing all of this energy, making sure that everything stays balanced. But what happens is, like, until now, even with the gods and even with the titans and even with like all of the ethereal battling, even with the shattered realm was still balanced. Because like the Gray was like, oh, the realm just shattered? And it looked inside of the inside of the new time and the new like space and everything. He's like, okay, well, he's like, well, everything's still okay. Everything's still balanced. So there was no need for the Gray to get involved in any of this, right? He's like, okay, I'm like, well, it'll take them a while to rebalance that out. We'll see what happens next, right? But things shifted when the light and the dark started combining with the elements, and especially the dark, because the Gray is very sensitive to shifts in power balance. That's his entire purpose. It does not care about anything else except for balance. And so, as these wars kept on going and more humans and more sentient beings were combining with dark energy, that started to tip the balance because there was not enough light energy to counter. The elements were equal, but the light and the dark started to shift, and the dark started becoming more powerful. The dark dimension started being born. There was no light dimension, right? Or the light dimension was like kind of like really, really tiny. But the dark dimension started becoming much stronger, and that's what tipped this guy off. He's like, whoa, something's off. He's like, and he realized, like, the Gray realized, if the dark dimension if the darkness keeps on expanding, it's going to eat everything. It's going to destroy everything. And so, for the first time in everything since creation, the Gray makes a decision, right, by itself. The Gray basically wakes up and becomes sentient. It's like, shit, something had to happen. The balance is broken. And what it does, the Gray by itself is very powerful. But the Gray cannot go against its own function. it cannot directly involve itself. It is it is basically like the Watcher in Marvel. It can see everything. It feels everything. It cannot leave. If the gray leaves this post and these two like kiss even further, like go for the tongue, that's it, right? So the gray must be there at all times, maintaining this balance. So the gray cannot leave his post. So the gray was thinking, even though it woke up, it's like I see what's going on. I feel the darkness, but there's nothing I can do, or is there? So then the gray started realizing that the energy of the positive and the negative is what created the constants. And the constants created the ethereals, and the ethereals created the like titans, and the titans created the gods by accident, and God created the humans. So the gray is like, okay, I have to create a balance. How can I create a balance? Until now, the gray has not used any of its power because it didn't realize that it had any. But then it's kind of been studying from like dad and mom kissing for like a couple billions of years. They're like, wait a minute, their energy has been running through and around me this entire time. So even though I can't leave, what if I create my own avatars? And that's exactly what the gray decided to do. But the gray has been observing everything, so the gray is actually much smarter than is like the smartest person here, basically, right? So the gray actually made a plan. It's like, okay, I am going to have to divide my energy. I am gray. I have both light and dark. I have all of the power of the constants within me. However, I cannot leave. I need to create something that will create balance for everything. However, I need to do this carefully because the gray realized the mistake of the constants and the ethereals. The ethereals were their base function was only to expand their territory. And that's where the war came from. It's not that they had no concept of good or evil. They did not hate each other. They did not love each other. They didn't give a shit about each other. They just needed to expand. So the gray decided that when it divided its energy, it was going to put it into something that put it into something and divide it in a way to where there was no need or desire for expansion, basically. And in order to do that, it's like I need avatars. And so the gray split some of its own energy, and created the primordial dragons. And this is where we start entering this is where we start leaning more into the lore of the modern WildFIRE story. So what the gray did is separated its energy and basically basically not combined, but separated its energy into a balanced form of a dragon for each ethereal energy, as well as the light and the dark. So it's like I have the same energy, not as powerful as dad and mom to create like the constants, but I can actually create something similar. I need something similar. I need something that is sentient, and I need something that is wise, and I need something that does not feel the need to expand or go to war. Like nothing that would try to conquer the others. Something that would be balanced. Well, that actually knocked out it didn't really knock these two out, but so the gray created all of the dragons, the red dragon, the blue dragon, dragon, the brown dragon, so this would be not like the fire, water, the earth, the green dragon, the earth dragon. This would be the sand dragon. I'll explain what this one, the metal dragon, and then the wind dragon. But it also remembered the way that the reason that Shattered Realm was created was because the balance of the one ethereal that was actually acting as the balance between the other ones was destroyed. So it also created the Alpha and Omega dragons. So the Alpha dragon is the female dragon. The Omega dragon is the male dragon. These two dragons are special. These two dragons are designed to, like, these are the failsafe that the Gray created. So if the balance ever gets broken too much, like by any of these other dragons, these two will wake up. And like they're like the Gray made them sleep, but when the world starts getting too far out of balance, these two are the cleanup crew. So basically, like the Omega Dragon will wake up, and the Omega Dragon's purpose is to eat the universe. It's very powerful. Actually, the Gray put more power into these two than the others. That's why they're sealed, basically. But if things get too far out of balance, the Gray is like, I might not be able to handle everything. So it put like a lot of its power into these two. So when the Omega Dragon wakes up, that means the end of the universe. He wakes up to eat the universe, right? That's his purpose. Then after the Omega Dragon eats the universe, like while he's eating the universe, the Alpha Dragon wakes up. And like her job is to start preparing to make a new universe, right? So after he eats everything, she is waiting for him, and they're going to give birth to a new universe, right? And that new universe will basically be born as a phoenix, right? The union of both of these, right? But for the meantime, that's not necessary. So like it hasn't reached that point yet. So the Gray creates these guys and kind of seals them in the same kind of barrier that the light and dark ethereal seal themselves in, right? So the Gray creates all of these dragons. And the reason he creates them as dragons is, one, they're sentient, they're wise. Two, like they cannot be like, if they go to like Earth or something, then people cannot claim them as like, oh, this is like one of my kids. These are things that have never been seen before. And also, like, the Gray programmed them to where they cannot reproduce. The only two that can reproduce are these two, and they produce universes. So if they start making babies, your universe is dead. But these guys, these other dragons, they cannot reproduce. However, like, even though they cannot reproduce, they don't have the desire or the ability to make babies or make offspring of themselves. However, these dragons are super freaking huge. I mean, like, one could not step on Earth. If it stepped on Earth, it would crush it. That's how big these things are. But even though they cannot reproduce, make offspring or expand themselves, and are eternals, what they can do is make clones and copies of themselves by using their scales. And that's exactly what the Gray has them do. So the dragons, they discuss with each other, and they're like, okay, well, like, our job is to create balance. Right now, the Shattered Realm, the universe is, like, everything is out of balance. So they start sending scales, like little small scales of themselves, into the universe, into the Shattered Realm. And these small scales actually start becoming avatars. So they take on the properties of their parents, basically. They cannot mix, they cannot match like energies, which is one reason why the Gray designed them, because they are in perfect balance. So, like, in order to maintain balance, each of the 6 dragons sends one scale to each of the planets in the universe, the sentient planets in the universe, where the wars are going on. And the purpose of these dragons going to these planets is going into the Shattered Realm. They're traveling, their scales are traveling, their avatars are on their way. They show up, and they are not necessarily the friends of the gods. They were sent there, their main programming and their main purpose is to create balance. That's all they're there for. And the way that they're going to create balance, their main purpose is actually to create balance between the light and the dark, because the dark is getting so strong. And they realize that the things that are creating the darkness are not the humans, but the Titans and the gods that created the humans. Because the Titans and the gods, they just keep on producing humans. just man not caring about them. They're just producing weapons, basically, producing things to fight battles for them, and so they don't really care about them. And so like because of that, like these humans are dying. These humans and these creatures are dying in mass and giving more energy to the dark side of the universe. Right. So the dragons, their mission is to show up, and they tried talking to the gods. At first, they're just like, yo, you guys got to stop making these humans and crushing them, like, every 5 minutes just for your plate, just because they're your playthings, right? And the gods, like, they've never seen dragons before, and they're not trying to hear any of this stuff. And they're just like, well, these are our creations, and like, and so, they didn't realize that the dragons were designed to be much stronger than them. So these dragons actually go off. They tried to negotiate with them. Some of the gods were smart enough to listen. They're just like, okay, we will stop producing humans, and we did not know any of this thing. We didn't know about demons. We didn't know about darkness. We're sorry. That we will leave humanity alone, and But if we do that, then these other gods and titans are going to attack us. So what do? And the dragons are like, I'll take care of it, and they did. The 6 dragons on each planet, each of the warring planets throughout the universe, they waged war on the gods. And they won. I mean, they're like the ones that, so they either like the ones that they beat them, so they beat that ass so bad that Zeus and like Izanami and all of them, like, they're just like, okay, we surrender. Like we cannot match your power. So we give up. And the ones that didn't give up, the dragons just mercilessly destroyed them. They no longer exist. Like, burnt them completely out of existence. And the reason that the dragons were much more powerful is because they have light and dark magic, right? They have the light and the dark energy. They contain traces of the light and dark energy from the gray. And like I said, the gray is much more powerful than everybody gave it credit for. But, because the dragons were created directly by the gray, specifically for this purpose, like, no god could stand up against them. So the dragons, like, they just went on a rampage, went across every planet, and they're just like, will you give up this war? Yes, okay, you can live. Now build something, get the fuck off the planet. And like, so they basically did a purge of every planet, every titan, every god. They're like, you can leave or you can be destroyed. Many of these gods were hard-headed and got destroyed. I mean, just got wiped out, right? And that is effectively what ended the age of the gods. That's why in my storyline, we don't see gods around anymore, because the dragons were sent to get rid of them, right? Now, at this point in time, the dragons are just performing their function. They're just like, okay, you guys are creating darkness. Like, we don't care about like these little small things running around, like these humans or these animals or anything. You guys are creating darkness and you're upsetting the balance, and Daddy Gray is pissed. So we got to get rid of you, or you either stop or we get rid of you. I don't want to stop. Problem solved. And that's all they did. So after they cleared the area of the gods and stuff like that, I mean, they beat them so bad. They're like, okay. Not only did like the gods of Olympus, like they burnt, like Mount Olympus still exists. What was on top of the mountain doesn't exist anymore because the dragon burnt that shit up, right? And then like Zeus and like some of the wiser gods are just like, okay, we will not fight you anymore. We are sorry, we will leave. And so like the Mount Olympus got abandoned, right? The gods are like, we will no longer set foot on like on this earth or on this. We will go somewhere else, and that's what they did. So that's why they vanished. Like the Egyptian gods, Anubis and all of them, they got their asses kicked too. And so they had to leave in a hurry because the dragons were really pissed at them. They got beat so bad that they left their pyramids behind. This was supposed to be an escape vessel for the Egyptian gods, to like bring their armies with them and go like to a different place to try to wage war again. And the dragons are like, you thought we were gonna let you leave with that? And Anubis is like, all right, I'm out. So they jumped into like some other pyramids and took off and left the Sphinx and everything there, right? And the same thing for like the Mayan temples. The Mayan temples were actually like also a place of production for humans. Humans for the fire dragon. Humans for like those gods, and they were just producing humans, sending them out to get slaughtered, creating a lot of darkness and stuff like that. And like these gods, they actually got wiped out by the dragon because they refused to stop fighting. They're just like, we can take the dragon, we can take the dragon. The dragon's like, Katon, Gokakyu no Jitsu. No, you can't. And so the gods of these pantheons, they got wiped out. And then like the city of Atlantis got like they were their gods, they were like the sea gods and stuff like that. But like the dragon didn't care, they could swim. So like the Atlanteans, they were actually like half of them got destroyed, the other half they're just like, okay, yeah, we give up, we're leaving. And so like they created their own realms, they went to different places, and they left humanity and all of these stars alone. Even like Stonehenge was a communication like place, for like coordinated attacks and stuff like that. Dragons are like, you guys want this? And the gods are like, no, we don't. You can like keep it as a decoration. And he just bounced, right? And they left that there. So that's why we still have like the pyramids, like the Mayan pyramids, like the Sphinx and stuff like that, because the gods had to abandon them. Because the dragons made them choose. You stay here and fight, you leave, or you stay here and you fight and you die. And that was their only option. So many of the gods, they gave up the fight, they surrendered, they left, and they've never been seen again. And that effectively ended the age of the gods in our storyline. And now, but for humanity, this kind of creates a problem, because humanity had been slaves. We've been slaves and like just used as parts of a war machine ever since the time we were created, right? Mankind has only been on the earth for approximately I think for what 6,000 years or something like that. Like Earth is like 10 billion years old. Humanity maybe like 4.5. But you'll notice that like even like today, humanity is still pretty young when it comes to civilization. Even though we were on the planet for 4.5 billion years, like we didn't start making any like civilization. We didn't start creating civilizations until about like 6,000 years ago. And that's like historically speaking, right? So in my storyline, the reason that is because for the first like 3 million years or so, we were just slaves, war machines, expendable, like stuff fighting wars for gods that didn't care about us. And so like that, now that the gods were gone, humanity was free. And free, but they only had like a baby's knowledge. Didn't know how to survive, because until then the gods kind of took care of us as their war machine. They fed us and stuff like that, and like, not much, and they didn't teach us anything. It was just like just how to fight, how to try to expand territory. That's all we knew how to do, right? But now that the gods were gone and the titans were destroyed, humanity was left by itself. And this presented a problem for the dragon, because even though they weren't sent there to save humanity, they were sent there to prevent the darkness from getting stronger and prevent the dark dimension from growing. But by getting rid of the gods and the titans, there's a power vacuum, right? And humans are just there by themselves, and the dragons realize, they're like, wait a minute, all these things know how to do is kill each other. That's all they were trained to do. That's what they were made for. So we can't just necessarily just leave these things by themselves, because what's going to happen? They're going to start fighting and killing each other again. So what the dragons did is they held a council. And these are the first dragon scales that have come. These are the first primordial dragon avatars. Now, the first primordial dragon avatars, they held a council. And at this point in time, humanity does not know what to do. We've always been divided. We've always been fighting. Like, we've always been, and now that the gods are gone, we're all basically kind of nomadic. And so what the dragons do is they decide to have a dragon council. And the humans know that they've been freed by the dragons. So there is a sense of, like, thank you for saving us, but, like, what do we do now? And, I mean, even language had not really been developed at this point in time. So the dragon, the first primordial dragon scales, they're sitting around and like, okay, well, we can't leave these things by themselves. They're just going to start fighting and like killing each other again and creating more like demons and dark dimension stuff. So, like at this point in time, like there's like just this huge like landmass where everything is like kind of fighting, and so these dragons are like, okay, well, we're not supposed, the dragon scales actually have an expiration date, kind of like that's another one of the sorry, that's another one of the grades failsafe that these things are not eternal, physically eternal. They can be reborn, they can be reincarnated, but they have like a limited lifespan, about like maybe like 3,000 years, and then they have to reincarnate. So what happens is like these dragons, they were fighting the gods for quite a while because like a lot of the gods were kind of hard-headed. So it took them a couple like thousand years to to get rid of the gods completely and finally like force this peace deal, right? And after that, the Earth started becoming like, because of the dragon's energy on Earth, like things started like becoming much better. And so the dragons were just kind of like, okay, well, we're gonna have to guide these guys, but first we need to come up with a system. So when they had their dragon council, like the humans that felt more of an affinity to a certain dragon would actually naturally gather around them. So the dragon would be like, okay, I'll take control of this group. But they're like, the problem is their landmass is still like together. And if they're within close proximity of each other, there's the possibility of them going to war again. So what we're going to do is we're going to create different factions, and we're going to split the landmass. So what these 6 dragons did, they actually broke off their own scales. One of their own scales, they're like, okay, we're going to sacrifice ourselves. And the way that we're going to do this is we are going to become part of the land, right? And we're going to become part of the land, and then we're going to separate. We're going to actually separate this landmass. And we're going to take the people who have an affinity to our element, that are more aligned with our element through their creators. We're going to take those people with us because they're just naturally more aligned to us. So we're going to lay down on this land, and we're going to transfer our energy into this land. And that will become part of our land, and we're going to take our people and we're going to move away from the rest of you as much as we can on this small globe, right? Some of the elements are a little bit more aligned with each other, so they can stay closer. But the ones that like fire and water, we have to put them on the opposite sides of the globe because if they meet, they're naturally going to start fighting. And this is where the concept of East and West comes from. All right. So, like these dragons, they break off part of their scales. They each choose an area of this huge landmass to lay down on, and basically die. But they're dying to transfer their energy into that, right? And so that's where I think this map comes in. And this is basically like a rough, map of what this would look like. So, we have our fire dragon, basically laid down on the landmass that would become the Americas. And it separated itself from the mainland here. Then we have the Iron Dragon, which is part of Europe. But it couldn't really go too far up north because the people, they're like, okay, well, if we go up north, these people are going to freeze to death. So we're just going to hang out around here. So we need to be close to elements that are not really going to affect us that much. And that's why metal and wind, the Chinese wind dragon, are close to each other. And also that's why the metal dragon can kind of chill with the earth dragon in Africa, right? So these 3 were thought to be able to live in harmony because they're not exactly polar opposites. So they can actually work together and maybe not interfere with each other so much. The dragons would never fight. They're not programmed for fighting against each other. They're fighting for maintaining balance, right? And with the landmass that is available, this is what the best that they could come up with at the time. The sand dragon is actually in Australia, and they figured that the sand dragon and the earth dragon, the people of the sand and earth might try mixing, and might lose their identity. So that's why they separated these guys. And then the water dragon didn't really, the water gods like Izanami and Izanagi, when they went to fighting and all of these water gods, they went all in. They did not care about their humans at all. As a matter of fact, they were literally just throwing wave after wave after wave of human at their enemies when they were fighting. Did not care if they lived or died at all. So the population of the water dragon at this time was so small that they decided the water dragon decided I don't have enough people. I just need a small island, and then if we need it, and then we'll expand it later if we need to. But if you'll notice, the water dragon and the fire dragon were separated, like are completely on opposite ends of the earth. That was by design because water and like fire are not compatible. So if these two ever met, they would naturally start competing for dominance, right? So the dragons, they laid down in these land masses, and they gave up their life force to but they did they did rip off one of their scales and like put another avatar there that would reincarnate once they died. And then they pushed themselves apart with their tails, and that's why we have the current like map that we do, with America, like Europe, Asia, Africa. India kind of got like India was also part of the Wind Dragon's territory, and then like Australia just kind of there chilling down under by itself, and then like the Water Dragon of Japan is like on the opposite side of the world, and that was by design. So they pushed themselves apart, and like then after these dragons sacrificed themselves to accomplish this feat, their scales, their avatars took over. And when their avatars took over, their avatars kind of looked like, basically like the like this, because they're just copies of the previous dragons anyway. And so what they did is they're like, okay, well, now we have these people, so I have my people, you have your people. And the dragons, they're all friendly. They're just like, yo, you balance, you balance, you balance. The dragons will never fight against each other. And that was their purpose of separating mankind, to make sure that mankind never felt the need to fight against each other again. They don't know us very well. But, what happened after that is that each dragon in each culture kind of took over their didn't take over their territory. These dragons are not here to rule. They are here to teach, because teaching is a way to maintain balance. So in Africa, this is the rock dragon. And the rock dragon has all of the knowledge of the ethereals and of the gods before, because that's what it used to defeat them, right? But it's also much wiser because it doesn't have the need to expand its territory. It's just there to create balance and to make sure that these people can survive. Because if they start killing each other off, that creates more darkness for the dark dimension, right? So this is the Earth Dragon in Africa, teaching its people how to read, how to write, how to irrigate, how to build around the pyramids, using the technology that the gods left behind because they didn't want to die, to teach people how to survive in this landmass and how to adapt, and that went very well. And so they started learning how to speak, how to write. They created the alphabet. They started creating culture. And this was the effect of the Earth Dragon in Africa. Then we go over to the Americas, far on the west side, separated by a huge ocean, because this guy was the most aggressive one during the war. I mean, his not the dragon, but his the fire gods and the fire titans, they just want to fight. They didn't even need a reason to. At first, I need to expand my land. I need to expand in my territory. It's my nature. They're like Son Goku. They just want to fight. So that's why they got stuck on the west side with a big ass ocean in between them. That's why the fire dragon moved both of them far away from each other. They're not even connected to the other land masses because they're like, you know what? We can't take the risk. So the fire dragon moved his people over across the sea and created the Atlantic Ocean just to make sure that there's a barrier. But the dragon itself was actually very wise, and it taught its people how agriculture, taught it how to use the technology that that some of the technology that the gods left behind, and taught them how to read, taught them how to write, taught them everything that they needed to survive, taught them how to they taught them how to make tools. None of the dragons taught their people how to make weapons. They only taught them how to make tools. And then humans are going to human, right? But this is the fire dragon's teaching, and the fire dragon not only taught people in North America, but all the way down to South America. So that's why a lot of their cultures have similar dragon references. All right, and because that was the only dragon that was known on the in the Western Hemisphere. And then we've got the metal dragon. The metal dragon of Europe, and this is the one that was teaching technology, how to build stuff and how to work with metal, which he kind of regretted later. very much. He's one of the dragons with the most regret. He's like, yeah, I shouldn't have taught him that, but like he did. And he's like, okay, well, you can build stuff because a lot of the territories that this dragon inherited weren't necessarily so good for agriculture. Because it was kind of stuck up in the north, and like the weather is kind of cold there. So they thought, okay, well, I need to teach you stuff that will like help you survive in a much colder climate. But you know, if you have these metal tools and stuff like that, then it'll make working with like your environment much easier. So he taught them like philosophy, taught them all of this stuff, which they then later like tried to use to take over like the rest of the world. Yeah, but he did educate them and taught them how to cook and stuff like that, right? So this would be the metal dragon. Then we go over to the wise Chinese wind dragon. And the wind dragon is like was very, very wise, very like, one of the wisest dragons. And he had a lot of resources. So he's like, okay, well, I'm going to teach you guys how to expand, not necessarily through conquest, but through trade, how to make stuff, how to make clothing, how to make like irrigation, how to build walls, to protect your territory, not necessarily from enemies, but from like from like elements and stuff like that. And like how to like read and stuff like that. He taught them a lot. And that's one reason why, like the Wind Dragon is considered one of the wisest of them, because he was able to teach his people so much, and they were able to expand. Now they were able to expand because they had like more landmass, more territory, just naturally because they had so many like people. Because like the reason, okay, so in my storyline, the reason why the Chinese population is like so huge is because they were they were developed by the wood titan and wood god, right? What did the wood do? It grows, it expands. So like he kind of found a more effective way of growing humans for his army. And like so that's why they have like so many numbers compared to the Japanese dragon, which only had a few. Because this dragon, like the immortal god, is like, okay, I have the power of growth, so I can actually produce people faster than any of the other like gods, who are faster and like stronger and more pliable than like the rock god, kind of thing. So that's why they have like larger numbers, naturally. But this dragon took them all under their wings and like taught them everything that they knew. And then like we have like the Australian dragon. Now the Australian dragon, like it's just kind of like occupying the land down under, and it kind of got screwed in the deal because they didn't realize that there was nothing there. But like it's like the sand dragon is like, okay, well, these people, they don't necessarily require so much. They are very tired of fighting. They just kind of like they just need their own space. And he naturally chose this area because he's like, okay, he was going for the space. Like he's like, okay, this has a lot of space, and these people have a lot of potential. So if I can teach them how to like do agriculture and stuff like that, they can actually grow. Like there's no limit to their growth, and it gets them away. It gets them away from the other like tribes that might be very similar, so that they can have their own culture and not be absorbed by like the rock dragon, or not really interact with the rock dragon as much. And so that's why he chose Australia. And then like he realized, oh, no, there's nothing here but kangaroos and wallabies and stuff like that. But it's alright. And so he taught them astronomy, how to hunt, how to track, and how to like start growing food. And they were started preparing for expansion into agriculture and stuff like that. But then like there was the dragons don't necessarily control the weather all the time. So he was located a little bit too far from the water dragon, and that's one reason why Australia is like dry. All right, so and then we go to the water dragon, and this is one of the other like wisest dragons, right? And so the water dragon was like is one that like taught the Jomo, like, well, basically it kind of took care of Japanese people until the Jomon period, well, even after the Jomon period. So like it taught them like how to fish, because there weren't such a large number of these survivors from the war. So it's like, okay, I'll take you under the wing. I'll teach you how to like how to eat by fishing, how to do agriculture, how to read, and like how to make stuff. But like he wanted to make sure that they were far away from the fire, um, from any other dragon that might try to absorb them because of their small numbers. So that's why the water dragon, she chose Japan, right? And so like your numbers are so small. If you're located in the area of another like dragon zone, you're naturally going to get absorbed. So in order to prevent that, the water dragon moved them over to an island. Excuse me. And that's where Japan comes from. The population of Japan comes from. And so like this is like basically all the dragons kind of taking care of the people that are representative of the elements that the dragon themselves represent. So after that, like this is where we enter the age of the dragons, where the dragons are like looking after the people, teaching them, educating them, like giving them the tools that they need to survive that they didn't have for the first 3.5 billion years of their existence on Earth. So the dragons are actually trying to give them a chance. And like these dragon scales are also not permanent. They are only supposed to stick around for about like maybe 2 or 3 thousand years before they also have to like disappear and reincarnate. And so during this time, this is the Dragon Age, and like while a lot of cultures actually like learn to like work with their dragons, listen to them, learn the technology, and actually revered their dragons, like there were other cultures that, especially in Europe, so this is like this is also during the Dragon Ages where people started worshiping their dragons. Well, I mean, they always worship their dragon, but this is where humans started becoming, like, certain humans started making bonds with dragons. This is where, like, the dragon priest and priestesses start appearing. Divine followers of the dragon, those that are blessed by the dragon, those that even have, like, dragon blood inside of them from rituals. And, like, so that's where, like, the holy priest and priestesses start coming from. Right. Because these are like the high priest of each culture that like could directly talk to the dragon, directly receive his powers, like and stuff like that. And so like every culture had these types of. That's why every culture had the dragon. But my every culture used to have people that would worship the dragon back in the old day. But humans being humans, as time goes on, like their feelings for the dragon age start to change, especially as they get more knowledge and gain access to more tools, right? So while like certain cultures, like in Asia, like China and like Japan and Asia, they were taught and are still taught to revere their dragons, and to be thankful for the knowledge that they received from the dragons that helped their society and that helped their civilization. Other like cultures, like especially in Europe and in the West, they were actually starting to, the more powerful that they got and the more weapons that they started to build, they started being taught to fear, to like hate their dragons. And that's where they started going like, they would start having dragon hunts, thinking that they could kill this thing. So they started hunting their dragons. They started demonizing their dragons. They started like revolting against their dragon because like the humans were like, well, like we should be in control of our own fate. We should be ruling ourselves. We need to we need to bring back the old gods to like conquer and to wage war on the other nations. And so the dragons naturally were against that. So like the politics and religion and stuff like that turned the people against their own dragons, their own teachers. And so eventually like the dragons were hunted. Some of them like were killed in battle, but like eventually they just kind of realized they're like, well, my time is about to expire anyway and I need to like reincarnate. So it's just not worth dealing with these foolish humans anymore in this area. So like the European dragon, but like I'm out. So he just bounced. So he's like I'm not gonna deal with these foolish humans anymore. And so because they're not gonna respect any of the teachings that I gave them anyway. And like the European like were some of the ones that actually started like going to war again. or faster because they developed metal, right? They developed weapons first before agriculture and a lot of the other stuff that they needed. So this is where we come back to the map that we were looking at before. So, like, these guys over here in America, they're just kind of doing their own thing, but it's a fire dragon. So, after the fire dragon, like, starts to lose its power, and gets ready to reincarnate, well, the humans, they've learned a lot of stuff from, these dragons, but, you know, them being human, they still have a lot of land and a lot of territory that they need to expand to. And so that's what they start trying to do, and this creates war between like Aztec, Mayan, and like other cultures and stuff like that, because they get back into that expansionist mentality. And in Europe, well, Europe was kind of at a disadvantage because it had a smaller area that was mostly cold all the time anyway. So because they couldn't get a lot of agriculture and stuff like that, but they were still expanding rapidly, like on a population base, then their natural thing was to actually turn into like, they're like, we can't grow anything, so we have to take things from other countries. So that's where like the metal dragon started having regrets, like maybe I shouldn't have taught them how to make spears and swords, but but they did, or like tools, metal tools, because they started using those tools for basically raiding their other countries and trying to take their resources, right? And this is where we started getting into the Roman Empire and stuff like that, which was trying to expand. It started off mostly as like need for resources during the cold season, but then it quickly developed into like politics, religion, expansion, and stuff like that. And so this dragon, he's like, well, like I kind of screwed up, but sorry guys. And so he started getting ready to reincarnate. The African dragon was basically like kind of chilling by itself, like doing its own thing. Its people were like kind of happy until the Sahara Desert started like drying up, and they're like, okay, well we need resources too. And so that's where Egypt just started like getting a bit stronger, and like started going out and trying to get like more resources, or trying to build more resources itself, like using like capturing slaves and stuff like that to make him do work. And so this guy, he's like, well, I taught him everything, but the area around here is like kind of drying up. So, and my power's like kind of starting to fade because of the sun and stuff like that. So, so like the Chinese dragon was being one of the wisest. The Chinese dragon basically tried to stay out of almost everything. Didn't want to try to involve itself too much with the European dragon and stuff like that, because he realized what the humans were doing, and he noticed that they had more of a thirst for like conquest. Whereas the Chinese dragon, they're like, okay, well, sorry. I've taught them to be more innovative and stuff like that, so like hopefully they won't need to necessarily try to like invade over here, but they do need to know how to defend themselves, like from all of the other dragons around. And also like the dragons are not evil. The people started changing. They're like, well, we need to expand too, and they started looking overseas and like for resources and trying to build ways to get access to other stuff, right? The Australian dragon was just down here by itself. Now, while the dragon was there, sorry, I had to drink something. I didn't think it was going to take so long, but okay. So like, while the sand dragon was down here, Australia was like beautiful and stuff like that, but because the Earth like kind of tilted on its axis and stuff like that, while Sand Dragon was down there wasn't really so much that it could do. So when this dragon started losing its power, Australia started like getting drier. So the dragon like is like, okay, well I need to do something to protect these people. So it kind of like kind of accelerated its own death in order to provide like more like forest, trees, stuff like that, to give the people more time to adapt and to survive. So, and to keep them separated, keep them separated from the other dragons. And then we have the Japanese water dragon, and this is the one that we're going to be focusing on mostly for the WildFIRE storyline. Now, the reason that we're going to be focusing on the Japanese water dragon is because unlike these other dragons around here, like the American dragon is separated, but it's still got like a huge landmass. These dragons, these three are kind of clumped together, so like these humans are eventually going to start crossing and interacting with each other, and that's going to create conflict. The Australian dragon is so far down there, nobody even remembers them. Like, he don't even get a postcard for Christmas, right? But the Aboriginals, they're like totally separated, so they're not considered a threat. But like all of the other dragons, this one is the most. The Japanese dragon is the most isolated of them all, right? Beside the American dragon, but nobody cares about them because they're fighting it anyway. But in this area, the Japanese dragon is the most isolated because it's on an island. And so, because of its location and small population density at the time, like none of these other countries were really too concerned about the water dragon. They didn't really, they were not focused on Japan. They started fighting against each other in these areas first. And so, like, for this means that for a while, Japan was actually shielded not only by the power of the water dragon, but by its own isolation. It didn't have to deal with a lot of the conflicts and a lot of the wars that started happening in these areas. So, like during these areas, they had the the Pangea Wars or whatever that's called. Like, they had the Roman Empire. They had like the Persian like wars. So there were so many wars and conflicts that started happening as these cultures started to expand. These guys moving up, these guys moving south, and east. So that their humans naturally started interacting with each other and fighting again, creating more wars, right? And but during this whole time, like Japan is just kind of over here chilling, like just kind of minding its own business, and not getting involved in all of these things. So this is like the Jomo period of Japan, like Yayoi period of Japan. So like before those, and so during this time, the wisdom of the water dragon is still there, and Japan is still actually kind of pure. Because like they're not really fighting so much, so there's not so much blood being spilled on Japanese land, and therefore there are not as many demons being born. In these areas, there's lots of demons being born because of the conflict. In these areas, there's lots of demons being born because of the conflict. In this area, they didn't have enough people to start enough wars to start creating demons. So, and they were still being raised in the wisdom of the water dragon, and like there are people like that. This is where the Shinto religion started to develop. But in the other countries, this is what was going on. Now, I have pictures of the samurai and stuff here. Don't worry, Japan's going to get to its into its bloody battles later. But the thing is, because of their location, they got started in warfare much later than these other continents, right? So therefore, their demon population in Japan was much lower. Their dark energy, production was much lower than these other countries, other than the Aboriginals who were just basically just dying by kangaroo. And they didn't no demons were created because of that, because very few, because you didn't even see it coming. It's like, oh my god, what's that? Boom, dead. So you had no time to plan. It was not premeditated by the kangaroo, right? Here, a lot of the deaths were premeditated because they actually had to dress up in armor and get a sword to go kill you. But in Japan, that wasn't necessarily the case because it was so isolated and because the population was so low that it did not necessarily that it wasn't necessarily threatened by these other ones. And the fire dragon was so far on the other side of the ocean that it was not a threat, right? And this is a very important part because remember, all of these dragons, their main purpose is to maintain balance. But these dragons actually start having problems with their population because even though they taught them the correct thing, the human expansionist mentality, the need and the desire to go out and expand and explore and take other people's stuff started kind of degrading the teachings that they received from the dragon, and eventually they fell into war anyway. And after every battle, more demons were being born because the blood was seeping into the ground, and more dark seed were being born, more Kuragami were being born, and Kuragami is the name of the demon that's born from corrupted human blood, right? So all over the world, demons are starting to be born again because humans are starting to fight again, right? Except for in Japan, right? Japan is the water dragon's area is still pure. So, and this continues for like a couple thousand years while these guys are going at it. These guys are just learning, growing, like building. Like they're still very slow development compared to like a lot of the other countries. I mean, like these guys, they're already in the bronze age and stuff like that, killing each other off. Japan is still like making wood huts and stuff like that. But it's slow development, and because there was no need for them to fight or no need for them to battle as much because they weren't surrounded by potential enemies, right? And so, because of this, the energy of Japan, the holy magic and the energy of the water dragon, was the most powerful. Now, what started to happen as these other countries and other like wars were going on and demons were being born all over the world, like eventually, like demon energy can sense pure energy, dark energy can sense light energy. And remember, darkness cannot exist without the light. They always have to balance each other out. So the more powerful the dark energy in these countries became, the more powerful the light energy in the water dragon's area became. And eventually, the dark energy noticed the water dragon. The Kuragami noticed the light energy from like Japan. And so, like, even though these countries had no idea how the dark energy was moving and how the demons would move, the demons like saw the Japanese water dragon's area as a threat because of the massive amount of holy energy there. So while these armies and stuff were fighting, the Kuragami demons actually launched their own attack on Japan, and their purpose was to kill the water dragon, right? Because the water dragon was pure; it hadn't been touched, it hadn't been tainted, and therefore it was a threat. So the dark energy decided to attack the light energy over here, and that's where we meet this girl. This is Ayami Nishiyama. So, for thousands of years, Japan had been isolated, just minding its own business, worshiping the water dragon, doing its Shinto rituals, like not caring about the rest of the world or anything like that, just in its own zone. But like because the Kuragami started, the blood from the other like countries started washing up on Japanese shores. Like that's where the Kuragami started like noticing like the high potential power of the water dragon clan, and so they needed to go try to conquer or eliminate that power. So the demons actually launched a raid on Japan, right? The whole collective of Kuragami, like, we can't have that. So they actually moved over to Japan, and started attacking Japan, like with their demonic forces. This is actually the first time that demons themselves have decided to move against have decided to engage in war by themselves, right? Normally, they're just kind of like a byproduct of a war, but this time they felt the light was so strong that they needed to take action. So the Kuragami, they moved over to they like sent all of their forces over to Japan to like one, test it, and two, see like if they could conquer the light over there, right? Conquer or taint, right? And that's where they met this girl, Ayami Nishiyama. And Ayami, she is a priestess, a bloodline priestess of the water dragon. She's pure, like like she's very powerful. Not only now, even though like she's a water dragon, like disciple, she can still use other magic. Most of the high level priestesses of each dragon know how to use like limited versions of other like spells and other like dragons power because the dragons taught them. Hey, I'm not the only dragon, so if you ever run into one of us and like you can learn this kind of. I have a little bit of this, bit of knowledge, but my knowledge is tainted. Like the dragon would be like, my knowledge is tainted. I know how fire works, but I am not a fire dragon. I'm a water dragon. So I can tell you how to do that, and I can show you like some basic stuff how to make fire. But when it comes to like using that stuff, you talking to the wrong teacher, right? So all of the priestesses of the top high level priestesses of each dragon, the top disciples, they know the basics of the other like elements, right? Because they have to. But like what happened is like these Kuragami, they came over to Japan and they were like, okay, we're just gonna like quickly take out this light source, and they run into her. Now Ayami, she's about 18 or 19 at the time. No, she's like 17 when the Kuragami first show up. And they had no, they were expecting a weak, because they saw the rest of Japan was not even that developed yet. And so they were expecting this weak little like priestess who didn't know what to do, that they were just going to be able to run up in there and kill. And then they met her, and she was totally prepared for them because she could feel them coming for years, right? She could feel, just like they could feel her, she could feel them. And as soon as they hit Japan, she was ready because she had been training. And so her and the water dragon, they're like, oh, you're going to roll up on our shores? Let us show you what's up. And then this happened. All right. So, I mean, like, the Kuragami, they show up in force, too, thinking that they're just going to go ahead and take this light source out. And, like, they got wrecked by Ayami and the water dragon, because their power was, their power is balanced. So the more darkness comes, the stronger, because there's not so many of them, there's not so much holy magic. Actually, she kept on getting stronger as they started getting more numbers, right? And Ayami, she had no pushover. She knows martial arts. She's got like holy magic. All of the dragon magic is holy magic, right? And that's what can kill, that's the only thing that can kill a Kuragami. So it had to be like, you can use all the elemental magic on them that you want, but if it's like not combined with holy magic, the demon doesn't die. But because Ayami had so much holy magic that was untainted, whenever she hit a Kuragami, that dude was dead. And they're like, I mean, not just dead, we're talking like soul complete destruction. Like there's like nothing left, nothing to seep back into the blood. There's like, it's this total obliteration, total nothingness, like completely wiped out of existence. And that's why the Kuragami were scared of her. And that's why they sent all of their whole armies to attack one girl. But Ayami's not just one girl. She's all, if you've ever watched the anime like Solo Leveling, that's kind of Ayami Nishiyama. She does have the power of necromancy, but her necromancy is also pure. She doesn't forcefully raise dead people or anything to fight for her. Like when like animals and like nature chooses, when she fights, animals, deceased animals, live animals, nature itself chooses to fight with her, right? So if she's ever in trouble, like trees will just rise up beside her. She doesn't even have to ask. That's how pure this girl is. So when the Kuragami showed up on the beach, the trees started walking. They're just like, whoa, you are in the wrong fucking territory for that. And like the Kuragami were shocked. They're like, we did not even know you had a soul. Yes, I do. Boom. So like she has animals that fight for her. She has trees. She has nature. She has the dragon that will fight directly for her. The Kuragami do not have a dragon. The darkness dragon doesn't exist. The Omega dragon is still asleep. So when the Earth armies, they have their dragons, but their dragons choose not to join battle because they know, they're like, you humans are fighting for, you're not fighting for survival, you're fighting for territory, and that's something that we are against. We will not help you. The other dragons refuse to help their human civilizations when they went to war. They're just like, our time is almost up. It is time for us to like get ready for our recycle. We will not help you. A lot of the European culture, after they tried to kill their dragon, they ran out. When they went to war, they would actually send people to go pray to the dragon and stuff like that. And the metal dragon is like, nope, I fucked up. I taught you guys how to like make metal, and this is what you did with it. I'm not lifting a claw to help you, right? And that's another reason why they kept on trying to kill him off. But he's like, I'm just gonna lay up in my cave. Anybody who rolls up in here and starts throwing spears at me is just gonna get fried. And then I'm gonna lay up, curl up, and die. And that's my whole only mission. I am not helping you at all. But like all of the dragons refused to help their cultures once they decided to go to war. The Kuragami were demons, so they never had a dragon to begin with, because the Omega dragon is still asleep, and if it wakes up, that means that they're dead too. So they just waged wars by themselves. But when they came to Japan, they did not know that the water dragon does not have the same rules, because Ayami is not fighting for war or for expansion. So her intention of fighting is pure, and the water dragon realized that it needed to fight with her in order to maintain the balance, in order to restore balance, because the darkness was so uh, was so wide and so expansive and so strong that it was strong enough to launch an attack by itself. And so, like, when the Kuragami showed up in Japan, Ayami and the water dragon and her like familiars totally wrecked them the first time, right? I mean, they like so the Kuragami, they actually forced the Kuragami to retreat. And this was when Ayami, this was just a small force. This wasn't the total force. She actually gets attacked a couple times, but like this was just the small force that showed up, and her and the water dragon and the familiars just wrecked them. And so the Kuragami actually had to retreat from Japan because the water dragon's barrier was so strong. At the end of the water dragon kind of created a barrier that kind of pushed them all away, but they had to retreat. And so like the darkness though is like, okay, yeah, we just lost like a massive amount of what the hell happened over Japan. And like so they went back and they reformed, and they're like, okay, we're gonna need a stronger force. And so like this was like, fortunately for the Kuragami, this is also when, like, in the era of the Battle of Red Cliff, where all of this stuff is like kind of. Oh, sorry, no, this is before the Battle of Red Cliff. There's like a lot of wars going on, and so they were never running out of supply of fresh demons, because humans in Europe and America just kept on dying and contributing to the Dark Dimension. And so, what they did is they waited and they started like making themselves stronger. The demons started making themselves stronger, and they started trying. They did this by actually starting to talk more to politicians, more to kings, and like having them kind of do stupid stuff that would go out and start killing a lot of people, right? And that would like make more demons, and then these demons would eat the demons that were already existing. Started learning to eat the weaker demons, and in order to power themselves up, right? And so, like, this continued for a while. Eventually, Ayami, she's not immortal. So, she started getting... Oh, thank you for watching my stream, but I'm not interested in buying any views. Thank you. But, anyways, like, Ayami, she started getting older. Well, of course, she needed to reproduce another priestess, right? And so there was a guy that she was, like, in love with. He was actually, like, one of her soldiers, one of her bodyguards, one of her monks, right? And like he trained. He was a little bit older than her, because he was actually raised to take care of her as the new holy priestess of the water dragon. But he protected her so well, and they knew each other ever since they were basically ever since she was born. He was like only 2 or 3 years older than her, and so whenever she went to battle, he would go out. He was out there slaying demons himself, because he was also imbued with dragon armor. And so he was always by her side. So eventually they do wind up getting married and having a kid. And when she gets pregnant, the Kuragami sense that she is pregnant and that she's about to birth another priestess. When she gets pregnant, she starts getting weaker. Her holy magic starts to drop because it's starting to flow into her baby. So the Kuragami, they're like, you know what? This is another time to launch another attack. And so that's exactly what they do. And so, the Kuragami, they're the powered up Kuragami. They're just we're not just going to send somebody. We're going to gather all of the Kuragami forces through the Dark Dimension, all over this world, and we're going to take this girl out. And they did. They gathered. They all went to the Dark Dimension. They gathered everybody in the Dark Dimension that they could find, and then they launched a full-scale attack on Japan, specifically targeting one pregnant girl. They also sensed that the water dragon was about time for the water dragon to begin its renewal too. So its lifespan was almost over, and it needed to reincarnate. So during this time, Ayami would not have the protection of the water dragon. as well. So they're like, she's pregnant, her energy is low, the water dragon's about to die. We can we could totally do this. They launched a full scale attack, and I think that's kind of where I'm going to stop this story. And the reason I'm going to stop this story is because, like, one, I didn't intend for this video to be this damn long, but I really enjoyed telling the story finally. Like I said, this is not something that I plan on animating or turning into a film or like really doing anything with this information except for this explainer video. You will find like you can find a lot of the main points and stuff you can actually find on my Patreon by just like going to my Patreon and like looking up the characters and like looking up the lore. So I have like a lore collection on my Patreon that you can definitely check out. So yeah, like lore scrolls and stuff that will explain some of this. But I am not really. It's not like I'm waking up in the morning. I'm like, oh, I need to like make an explainer video or make an anime about the beginning of the WildFIRE universe. That's not something I'm gonna do. I don't even think I'm gonna write a book about it, and that's why I'm making a video instead that just explains it like one or two times. Yeah, but I'm gonna stop the story here because this I'm actually continuing with the comic. So like after the second, when the Kuragami come again, basically that's where comic number 3 is supposed to pick up. So let's see, what do we got here? Oh, here's all the wars that Japan missed because it was isolated. I was gonna go through that. So here are all the wars that Japan kind of missed because it was isolated. This is like the this is after like before and after the Kuragami attack again, and you'll find out what happened during their second attack on Ayami. And this is like the Battle of Red Cliff that happened way after that. And then like you know, after Ayami defeats the Kuragami during the second attack, yeah, they get their asses kicked then too. And not only do they get their asses kicked, but they actually get sealed in the dark dimension, or in a space between the dark dimension. The dark dimension itself is like a highway of dark energy. But she sealed the way she was smart when she sealed them, because the way that she made her seal is she put them on the opposite side of the dark dimension, where they have to like break her seal to cross over and then like get to her, right? And it did cost her something. But like after she seals all of the Kuragami, then there's a massive like the Kuragami basically kind of got wiped out and sealed. The demon seed are still around on the planet. These are the physical plants, but the Kuragami themselves were mostly spirits that it like taken over organic form, got sealed, right? In a very powerful barrier. So in Japan, like after she sealed them, like, you know, after the attack was over, Japan went right back to being like a nice little peaceful like area. So they were still in their Jomo period, and then they moved over to their Yayoi period, and like the rest of the world, like the Kuragami were gone, but you know, the European countries and stuff like that, they were still doing their conquests and stuff like that. So they were still like contributing to the darkness factor. But her sealing Kuragami is actually restored the balance between the light and the dark for a long time, right? Well, not a long time, but for a time, right? And so like the gray was happy, and so this is like Japan, just like in a nice peaceful time, like no demons running around the countryside trying to kill them off. And like this continued for a while. Even like one of Ayami's descendants, who was Queen Himiko of Yamatai. Like she was Queen Himiko was actually a historical figure, but in my story, Queen Himiko is actually the descendant of Ayami Nishiyama, who is also able to communicate with the reincarnated water dragon, right? So, and she's also a very powerful shamanistic princess or queen, and historically speaking, even the Chinese recognize her as like they gave her an official title as being like the friend of the Queen of Wu and the friend of Wei, because the Chinese really respected her, and like they even claimed that she had supernatural powers, right? Historically, right? So like Queen Himiko is in my story is the descendant of Ayami Nishiyama, And like, you know, then that's this girl who defeated the demons basically all by herself. Um, so, and like that story continues. The reason I'm stopping the video with the second attack is because you're not really supposed to find out what happened in the second attack until you read comic number 3, which I'm in the process of creating right now. So, and like that kind of explains what happens during the second battle of Ayami's second battle with the Kuragami when they attack her when she's pregnant. And the spirit of the water dragon is like fading, right? So I am still working on this comic. I'm working on continuing this in Patreon. And that's kind of like what you're seeing here. So like after the events of after Ayami like defeats the Kuragami again, there's a nice long period of peace until her seal weakens again. Until like because humans never really stop fighting. And so like the blood is still being born, like dark energy is still being released, and so that the more that happens, the weaker, the stronger the Kuragami get in their demon realm, and the weaker her seal gets, and eventually that that seal breaks or starts to break, it starts to shatter, and some demons start being able to get through her barrier, like they're not able to completely break out, but they're able to send out they're able to send out some of their weaker some of their emissaries into the real world, and their emissaries, their main mission is to find the bloodline of Nishiyama because she's long gone since then. But her bloodline, people who carry the holy magic of the water dragon, the untainted holy magic of the water dragon, are still dangerous to them, are still powerful because like she stored so much like pure energy, and she passed that down through her bloodline, and that's where the story of the Ryukage begins, right? So the Ryukage starts with the Ryukage issue number 1 starts with the Kuragami demon escaping and immediately starting to hunt down the bloodline descendants of Ayami Nishiyama, and that would be the Morita sisters, right? So for those of you who are wondering what I'm talking about, like the Morita sisters are like their mother is actually a bloodline descendant of like Princess Himiko, who is a bloodline descendant of Ayami Nishiyama. And so when the demons manage to break out of their realm, they immediately make a beeline for her daughters, for the mother's daughters. The mother doesn't even know who she is. Like, she had no idea that she is like a bloodline descendant of Ayami Nishiyama, because that happened like thousands of years ago, and she has absolutely no clue like of even who her own mother is, right? But when the demons break out, it immediately starts going for these girls, especially the youngest daughter, Ryoko. This is Ryoko, and this is a clip of the first demon, or first demon emperor, kind of chasing her. And this is she had no idea what's going on. So that's the demon like chasing her when she's like 10 years old, and she's like, "What's going on here?" And nobody has any answers because like they don't know about the mother. They don't know about their history or their bloodline, right? So they just know that they're being attacked by something that's not human. And that's where the story of the Ryukage starts, right? You know, so they manage to fight one demon off, another demon comes, and like, so you can find out. I'm not going to explain everything to you. I want you to kind of like get curious and like check out the storyline yourself and like kind of see what's kind of going on with this. But yeah, you'll find a lot of the information, like all of the character profiles on my Patreon. So you can like actually sign up as a free member or a paid member. And you can like watch clips and you can like start learning more about the lore there. But for this video, I think that's going to be like kind of where I leave off, you know, with the events that are going to be explained in issue number 3 of the comic that I am working on. And not just comics, but I'm also like, you'll also find out some of this information in the video game that I'm making, because I am in the process of making a video game that called Ryukage Run. That's going to be my next stream, actually. I'll be like doing some game dev. And in that game that I'm working on right now, which is this one right here, this is actually a video game that will feature Ayami Nishiyama's bloodline, granddaughter, the Morita sisters. After the events of like comic issue number 2, where they start learning about who they really are and what their bloodline is and like what they're supposed to do, and they team up with a group of boys who have elemental magic because they've been trained by like a monk who is the disciple of the Wind Dragon. And so it becomes this really good adventure, and this is what kicks off the official WildFIRE storyline. All right, so I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please like, subscribe. I'm going to post this VOD up of this creation story. Yeah, I'll be posting this up. Hold on, let me make sure I'm like, yeah. So I'll be posting this VOD up on YouTube. So that people can like watch it whenever they want. I'll probably be breaking it into like into 15-minute segments and stuff like that, just to make sure that it's not as long as what I'm recording. But you can check that out anytime if you want to revisit this, and I'll be posting this on my Patreon as well as a series. And then like so you can like find this anytime you want. So if you like it, please like, subscribe. I won't be making this type of video again, but I will be making other videos that will explain more of the lore going forward from the comics and like what comes after the comics. So we have the Ryukage comic series, we have the CDULO, which is a totally different genre. That's like space cyberpunk aliens. And then we have the main WildFIRE storyline, which is also space cyberpunk aliens. But they're all connected because the like everything that I explained here is like, and this balance is a through line through all of those storylines, and all of the characters are connected. So the characters from the OG Ryukage series, the comics that I'm making, are actually the ancestors of the main WildFIRE timeline characters in the cyberpunk future that we're making, who are connected to the ethereals, to the gods, to the dragons, and everything I just explained here. So yeah, so if you're interested in this type of story, please like, subscribe, check that out. Check out my Patreon. Look at all of the character profiles, look at the games, read the sneak peeks that I've put up, and like watch some of the clips, the video clips. And I hope that will be enough to tide you over until like my manga and anime and video games are done. If you'd like to learn more as well, you can actually just go to Gumroad, and you can actually download these first 2 comics for free. And you can read my book, WildFIRE Legend of the Ryukage, which is actually the main storyline that continues after the events of these comics, to find out exactly what happens to their ancestors in the post-apocalyptic future. You can also support me on Buy Me Coffee, because I've started that up to post some lore videos, and you can play some of my WildFIRE related video games, because like everything that I do is connected to this storyline in some shape, form, or fashion. So you can check that out on itch.io, and I'll be like making some new games for that even today. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope I'll see you in the next video, and like take care, and I will see you in the next stream at least. So bye for now. You gotta figure out how to turn this off quicker. All right, catch you guys later.